You're not attracted, you're just emotionally triggered. And if that sentence feels uncomfortable, that's because it challenges something most people believe about themselves. We like to think that attraction is pure, that it is based on beauty, personality, or chemistry. But in reality, a huge part of what we call attraction is actually emotional activation happening inside our brain. It is not always love, it is not always compatibility, and it is definitely not always destiny. Sometimes what you feel is not attraction at all. It is your nervous system reacting to something familiar, something unresolved, or something emotionally charged. And the most interesting part is, you don't even realize it. Because emotional triggers don't feel like logic. They feel like intensity. They feel like obsession. They feel like, I can't stop thinking about this person. But behind that intensity, there is usually something deeper happening inside you. So let's break this down in a simple way. Human beings are emotional creatures. Every person carries past experiences, memories, wounds, expectations, and emotional patterns. And these patterns don't disappear. They stay inside the subconscious mind. So when you meet someone new, your brain does not see them as new. It compares them to your past. It asks silent questions like, does this person feel familiar? Does this remind me of someone? Does this energy match something I already experienced? And the moment there is even a slight match, your emotional system activates. This is where confusion begins, because you think you are attracted to the person in front of you, but in reality, you are reacting to something inside you. Let's go deeper. There is a concept in psychology called emotional triggers. An emotional trigger is anything that activates a strong emotional response based on past experiences. It can be a tone of voice, a type of attention, a behavior pattern, or even emotional distance. For example, if someone gives you attention inconsistently, sometimes they care, sometimes they ignore, you don't just feel confused. Your brain becomes highly engaged. You start thinking about them more. You feel emotional highs and lows, and you interpret that as attraction. But what is actually happening is your brain is trying to solve uncertainty. It is trying to understand an emotional pattern that feels incomplete. And the more incomplete it feels, the more your mind focuses on it. This is not love. This is cognitive tension. Another powerful trigger is emotional familiarity. If someone behaves in a way that resembles a past emotional experience, especially from childhood or past relationships, your brain reacts instantly. Even if you don't consciously remember the past experience, your subconscious does. So when someone triggers that emotional pattern, your brain says, this feels important. But important does not always mean healthy. Sometimes it just means familiar pain. Now let's talk about something very common: emotional unavailability. Many people feel intense attraction toward emotionally unavailable individuals, and they believe it is chemistry. But in reality, it is often a trigger. When someone is distant, unpredictable, or hard to get, your brain enters a chase mode. It starts focusing more on that person because it cannot predict outcomes. And the human brain hates uncertainty. So what does it do? It tries harder. It thinks more. It becomes obsessed with solving the emotional puzzle. And that obsession feels like attraction. But it is actually activation, not affection. There is another important mechanism at play: dopamine imbalance. Dopamine is the chemical in your brain responsible for reward, motivation, and craving. When someone gives you inconsistent attention, your dopamine system becomes unstable. Sometimes you get a reward, attention. Sometimes you don't. This inconsistency creates stronger psychological engagement than consistent behavior, because your brain starts chasing the next reward moment. And that chasing feels like feelings, but it is actually a loop. Now let's go deeper into something even more subtle: emotional projection. Sometimes you are not attracted to a person. You are attracted to what you imagine about them. Your mind fills in missing details based on desire, fantasy, or emotional need. You don't see the real person. You see a version of them created by your mind. And this version is shaped by your emotional state. If you are lonely, you project comfort. If you are insecure, you project validation. If you are emotionally empty, you project fulfillment. So what you feel is not real attraction. It is emotional projection. And when reality does not match the projection, confusion begins. Now let's talk about trauma bonding. This is one of the strongest emotional triggers in relationships. Trauma bonding happens when emotional pain and emotional reward are mixed together. For example, when someone hurts you and then comforts you, your brain links them to both pain and relief. This creates a powerful emotional loop. You don't just like the person, you become attached to the emotional cycle itself, and you confuse that attachment with love. But what is really happening is your nervous system is addicted to emotional intensity. Because calm feels unfamiliar, and intensity feels alive. But alive does not always mean healthy. Now let's talk about another hidden factor: attention addiction. Human beings are wired to respond to attention. When someone gives you attention, especially emotional attention, your brain releases dopamine. And if that attention is inconsistent or intense, it becomes even more powerful. This is why a simple message from someone can completely change your mood. You are not just liking them, you are reacting to the reward system in your brain. And if that person becomes the main source of emotional reward, your brain starts prioritizing them. But again, this is not pure attraction. It is dependency forming. Now here's something very important. Emotional triggers are not always negative. Sometimes they feel exciting. Sometimes they feel passionate. Sometimes they feel like deep connection. But intensity is not proof of compatibility. Just because something feels strong does not mean it is right for you. This is one of the biggest illusions in modern relationships. People think, if I feel this strongly, it must be love. But feelings are not always truth. Feelings are signals, and signals need interpretation. Now let's talk about why emotionally triggered attraction feels so real. Because your body reacts physically. Your heart rate increases. You feel nervous, you feel excited. You think about the person constantly. You replay conversations in your mind. This creates the illusion of depth. But in reality, your nervous system is activated, not your emotional compatibility system. Your body is responding to stimulation, not stability. And stimulation feels powerful, but it is not always meaningful. Now let's go deeper into childhood patterns. Many emotional triggers originate from early life experiences. The way you received love, attention, or validation in childhood shapes your adult attraction patterns. For example, if love was inconsistent in childhood, your brain may associate inconsistency with love in adulthood. So when someone behaves unpredictably, it feels familiar. And familiarity feels like attraction. But again, it is just a pattern repeating itself. This is why some people repeatedly choose similar types of emotionally unavailable partners without realizing it. It is not coincidence, it is conditioning. Your brain is trying to recreate what it knows, even if it hurts. Now let's understand the difference between attraction and emotional triggering clearly. Attraction is calm, stable, and grounded. It grows over time with understanding, respect, and compatibility. Emotional triggering is intense, chaotic, and fast. It feels like obsession, confusion, and emotional highs and lows. Attraction builds connection. Triggering builds dependency. Attraction feels peaceful. Triggering feels addictive. Attraction expands your life. Triggering consumes your mind. Now let's talk about detachment and awareness. The moment you become aware of emotional triggers, everything changes. Because awareness breaks the automatic reaction cycle. Instead of saying, I am so attracted to this person, you start asking, what is this triggering in me? And that question changes everything. Because now you are no longer controlled by emotion. You are observing it. And observation reduces intensity. When you slow down your emotional reactions, you start seeing reality more clearly. You see the person as they are, not as your mind imagines them to be. And sometimes that clarity reduces attraction. Not because something is wrong with the person, but because the illusion disappears. Now here is the most important truth. You are not always attracted to people. Sometimes you are just emotionally activated by your own internal patterns. And until you understand those patterns, you will keep confusing intensity with connection. But once you understand them, you gain power. You start choosing people consciously, not emotionally. You stop chasing emotional chaos and start valuing emotional peace. And that is where real maturity begins. Because real connection is not about being triggered. It is about being understood, stable, and safe. And in the end, when you look back, you realize something powerful. Most of what you called attraction was never about them. It was about what was happening inside you.